Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Boston and Fenway Park. The home of the Red Sox is temporarily the home of the Reds. Liverpool play the fourth game of this pre-season here against Sevilla tomorrow night. That's live and exclusive on LFCTV. Today, we have live training for you here as well. Jason McAteer is downside, pitch side with me, braving the temperature. Let's talk about this place first of all, before we get to the crippling heat. What a place this is. What an arena, what a stadium for sport. It's fantastic. The history, you can feel the history, can't you? Just kind of wandering around the place.
Well, we've come from a place that's obviously steeped in history, but for different reasons. The University of Notre Dame. Obviously, we played there last night. The campus, the facilities were absolutely second to none. It was a brilliant place to be. It was a brilliant place to go around and see the history, and it was great facilities for them. This is slightly different, still steeped in history, probably a lot more history. Predominantly a baseball park, but they've set it up as a football pitch, and yeah, they're doing a decent job. It's beautiful. It's got that old school feel about it, doesn't it? It's like a stadium, like an old football pitch, isn't it? Like football ground. Obviously, we're accustomed now to these new stadiums that are going up, but this is like an old football ground. I've just had a tour around the inside, the dressing rooms, and where they practice and they go hitting balls, and you know where the pitches probably take up a bit of practice. So that was interesting.
Did you have a little go?
It's a couple of home runs. Well, I'm a natural, aren't I?
I think they're still looking for the balls. Are they not just to the side of Boston, the river?
Yeah. Did you not see them fly out?
Yeah, he was good. Yeah.
No, so it's just the whole place is brilliant, and everyone, the fans are here, open training, and we're looking forward to it tomorrow.
Yeah, as Liverpool's head of press wanders into our shot, disappears behind us.
Matt.
Matt, thanks for
Hi, Matt. Just laughing
It's a fantastic place. You say you've been down, you had a little knock around in the. Like 1912 this opened, you can kind of feel it. Like, yes, it's got like a fantastic team, fantastic play, but it's still got kind of heritage. It's a bit like Anfield in some ways. It's got something about it when you step in. There's a bit of mystique to it.
All the nostalgia's around, isn't it? Letting you know, as you've said, when the stadium was opened and how many. Is it a World Series they've won? Although it's only American.
11 held here, I think it is. Because I can see all the wins they won last year as well. You know, you can see them all dotted around the pennants above us, just on the top below the Fenway.
So they're World Series, right? That only American teams play.
Yeah.
Okay, pretty cool.
Don't upset our hosts.
No, it always makes me laugh. That. No, but obviously, like Notre Dame. I mean, you know, and I mentioned it before. You know, American sport is all about winning and trophies and victory, and I said that like when walking around Notre Dame on the walls, it's all these things that are written and you can see them. You know, it is actually not about taking part. It's about winning at all costs, and the same as here. Yeah, we've moved states, haven't we, and we've moved places, but you go around Fenway Park and on the inside, and everything's like relating to championships they've won, World Series they've won, competitions they've won. All the great players are on the walls, all the history, and like I said, the nostalgia is there, and something that we're accustomed to obviously at Liverpool Football Club, with all the history and legacy that we've got.
Yeah, you can feel the history. You know, you've got the statues outside of famous players, famous coaches.
They do it well, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
America.
But it's all, that's the thing. America, no country probably does sport quite as well as America does. You see that whether it's like it's an American football stadium we were at last night. This is a baseball ground, but they love it so much. Guys live and breathe it, don't they? And it's just, I guess it's great if you're a player and you get to play in a different arena. It must be fantastic. When you came over and played in the World Cup and played in American football grounds, you must have found that just like, especially as a young lad, just like wow.
Yeah, well, '94 was my first taste of it. Obviously, as you mentioned there, the World Cup, coming over with Ireland and Giant Stadium. You know, when we played Italy in that game, my first thoughts were going in. The dressing rooms are so much bigger than what we were accustomed to. I was currently at Bolton at the time, Burnham Park, where their dressing room was about the size of this table. But you go in there, it's massive, and it's all the facilities, state-of-the-art stuff as it was back then. And then I just remember walking out through the tunnel area, and it was just tier upon tier upon tier, and it's like 100,000 people watched that game, and that was in '94. And then obviously the next day we played the game, and to see the stadium at its capacity, you know, mixture of the Italians but predominantly Irish, was just something I will never forget. And I've been back since, played in Chicago, went back to Giant Stadium where we played South Africa. You're right, no one does a sport quite like the Americans. They're all geared up for it, they're all geared up for success, and they put a show on.
You see the players just starting to make their way out behind us. You can hear the song start up. There's something that's just taking his place in preparation for today's session. The young lads walking out here, you touched on you going from Burnham Park to one of these super stadiums. Some of these lads are going playing for like Kirby Academy, maybe at Prenton Park, and then you're here. Notre Dame we were last night. Is it a bit of a like your head just go wow? It's almost like a different thing, different job almost.
You've got to deal with it, Mark. And you know, I was talking off camera to someone yesterday. You know, it was a learning curve for a young player. You know, my recollection is, you know, you can hold your own when you're playing in reserve team games and there's 300 people there. Probably you max out maybe 1,500, 2,000 for big games, derby games. But then all of a sudden you get thrust into the big time and you've got to play in front of 40, 50,000. You've got to be able to cope with that. You've got to be able to cope with the pressure. You've got to be able to cope with the noise, the anxiety that brings. You've got to then go on the pitch and perform, which means there's no hiding place. You've got to want the ball. You've got to put yourself in good areas, and you've got to be able to switch into that match mode. And there's been lots of players who haven't been able to deal with that kind of pressure that go by the wayside. And not only do you have to deal with that at Liverpool, but then you've got to deal with the expectancy of the crowd, which is winning, the pressure of winning every week, and that becomes a learning curve as well, and part of the learning ladder really. But you know, some of them players, as you mentioned, have had very little, you know, game time in front of massive crowds, and last night was probably the first experience for someone to play in 45, 50,000 as what was at Notre Dame last night, and I thought they all coped pretty well with it.
Do you remember the first time you were playing in a game with a big crowd where your touch, be it good or bad, got that ooh? You know that moment where a footballer has a bad touch or lets it roll or just been really good and the whole place goes in one? Do you remember that happening and being like, so I imagine that, you know, someone who's only ever played football that'll be Jurgen walking in then. Pretty popular man.
In these parts.
but you know, you get a reaction. Go step round so you can get a look round at what's going on as the guys make their way onto the pitch. So we're not in the way obstructing your shot. Most of the coaching staff now out waiting for the players to join them. We'll get more of that through the course of today's show, of course, up close and personal through today's session. But yeah, do you remember that kind of impact from the crowd where you were playing and then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, or what that was like? I imagine it must be quite jarring.
I was quite fortunate really, because my first game, albeit for Bolton, coming from non-league, you know, I played probably 6 months in the reserves at Bolton, but all of a sudden I was thrown in at the deep end in an FA Cup clash. Bruce Ware put me straight into the team, and you know, it's that being in the dressing room and the senior players really putting their arm around me. You know, Phil Brown, so we had Tony Kelly, Mark Seagraves was there at the time, Andy Walker, John McGinley. So you know, they put their arm around you and they try and talk you through it in the dressing room, but you can't really, you know, put into words what it's like handling the nerves. You've just got to get out there and focus and try and just do what you want to do. And obviously, you want the first touch to be right. I was fortunate to score on my debut as well, so that settled me down. But all of a sudden, that gives you confidence. And once you played the first game and you do okay, you want to play again, and then you just grow in confidence and you just keep it going and going and going. But yeah, I must admit, you know, coming on against Italy probably was my first taste of a real big attendance, a real big crowd where the noise was phenomenal and the colour and, you know, the magnitude of the game really, how massive it was, a World Cup game against Italy in a giant stadium, and all of a sudden I've got to go on for half an hour up against Paolo Maldini and Franco Baresi, and do you know what, you've just got to blank it out and go on there and try and enjoy it as much as you can, as much as you're shaking on the sidelines. You've got a job to do, and you go on there and you try and, you know, blank out any exterior noise, which is really hard with 100,000 people in the stadium, but you want your first touch to be right and you want to be positive. I think that's the key. I think you need to be positive. You've got to want the ball. You've got to attack the man. You've got to try and go past him. You've got to try and put your first cross in. You've got to try and make it good. If that comes off, you just build on that really through the game.
We've seen most of the squad are starting to make their way out onto the pitch just now, just in dribs and drabs. You hear the cheers go up every time a new group kind of come out.
Yeah.
We should touch upon the conditions. They're having to handle the occasion, some of these players, but also the conditions here. It is very hot. You'll see we look sweaty, we look a bit grubby. Actually, the hottest day in Boston since 1991. That's how warm it is for these players today. It's going to be like this tomorrow as well, pretty much. They're going to have to deal with that level of intensity. Similar, perhaps not as humid as it was last night in South Bend, but something similar for the game tomorrow as well. So it'll be a real physical test for the boys, especially these young lads stepping up to this line. Yeah,
you're right. It's testing conditions, certainly playing in this heat. But you would certainly think the lads have acclimatised now. They've been here probably, 4 or 5 days we've already had a game as well last night under them testing conditions. So it won't be too bad. They've been out every day. They've worked hard. They've run in this they've done running sessions in this climate, so it should be all right. It's a good test for them. The sun's obviously beating down here. Tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, hopefully the sun will just start to go down. That heat might have just gone out of the atmosphere, which you're hoping. But yeah, it all stands them in good stead. But it is what it is. We've got to come over here. We've got to play in these conditions, and we've just got to get on with it.
Of course, I guess for this game, there's a chance perhaps that some more of the senior players may come in from the start. We saw some of the boys who were back for their first game after their international duties, got half an hour or so last night. There might be a temptation for Jurgen to maybe throw a couple of those in from the start potentially. You've got the likes of Jordan Henderson, Virgil van Dijk, etc. Maybe get more time and ease them back in.
Yeah, well, we've seen the team that started probably played a good hour, didn't he? He didn't make many changes. I don't think he made any at all, did he, at half-time yesterday? So they all got a good hour under the belt. But then you look at the other lads who weren't playing, it might be their turn tomorrow night to get an hour under the belt. He spoke today, didn't he, about the importance of getting them minutes under the belt. It's a pre-season. There's a schedule that they stick to. Yeah, the result matters, of course it does, but it's all about managing the squad, because I've said time and time again since we've been out here, they've all had different seasons individually, whether it's going away with the country, whether it's being in tournaments with the country. Sadio Mane's only just finished last night, didn't he?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they were beaten, sadly, but, he was away till last night, so he's going to have to be managed. And it's all in preparation for what lies ahead from the Premier League start of the season in a couple of weeks, about 3 or 4 weeks' time, isn't it? So, yeah, it's all got to be managed.
Is this the most he's going to have to manage his squad, do you think, since he's been here, in terms of, bringing players back, but also the workload and intensity of games in those opening weeks? There's big games right from the off, so he's going to be very savvy how he brings people back in and who he uses for what.
Absolutely. I think if you look over Jurgen's time at the football club, he's got the squad probably where he wants it to be right now, possibly the beginning of last season. He let them go, he comes so close. Is he going to add a few more? Possibly not, maybe one might come in, but he's going to go with what he's got. It's been tough because, they touched on the Champions League last season, they won it, the season just gone. The season before that, they were in the Europa League, weren't they? Unfortunately, they didn't win it. But like I said, he's got that squad together now. When he's let them go, but also he's had to deal with international football, the pressure, the intensity that he's put these players under to achieve what he's tried to achieve. Yeah, it probably is his most testing time. I think the biggest thing as a manager, which I think you've got to give Alex Ferguson, Pep Guardiola certainly last season, is keep that hunger and desire from a team that's actually won something of the magnitude of a Champions League. He's got to keep them, hungry. He's got to keep that appetite there. He's got to keep that belief, that desire to win that Premier League. He's got to keep that. He's got to keep churning them words over all the time. This is the objective. This is what we've got to do. We're good enough. We've got to keep going. He's got to push them, because you're going to question yourself at times when you lose games.
Is that down your senior players then? So speak to Jordan Henderson this week. Yeah. You saw in his, he said, I couldn't wait to get back playing. I didn't want to be on a beach after the Champions League. I wanted to be back at it again. Guys like him, guys like James Milner, in every session will demand, or even last night, Sam Mingley, when he conceded that first goal early on, you saw that the look on his face. Pre-season game, he was livid, absolutely livid.
That's the attitude that the manager's created. The manager's created this atmosphere amongst these players, and it filters in. And you look at the likes of James Milner, Jordan Henderson, the experienced players in the squad, probably Andy Robertson now as well. You look at him as probably one of them senior players who's got that attitude. So you look at them when he's got his back turned. They're the lads who are on the training pitch. If you want a little bit more, they're the ones who are going to be digging you out. They show a great attitude to the kids as well, what it's all about. But they're the ones who filter that desire. Obviously through the lads, obviously it comes from the manager and it filters down. But they're like kind of your second in command, really. They're the ones who can affect it on the pitch. Sometimes it's very hard for a manager when you're on the sidelines. You pick your 11, you throw them out there. There's only so much you can do. It's down to you when you cross that white line. If you've got the desire, if you've got the appetite, if you've got the hunger, if you want to run that extra mile, that comes down to the individual, really. The manager can't dictate that. He can demand it, but he can't make you do it. That's got to come from within. He's got a squad at the minute and a set of players that want to do it from within, and that's a good sign going forward. Yeah,
and the good thing is about Jurgen, he sees everything, especially when it comes to training sessions. He'll often be standing back, let the coaches run the sessions. He'll just wander around, he'll keep an eye on it, and if someone isn't at it, if someone isn't showing that desire, they'll soon know about it, and ultimately long-term they won't be part of his plans, because he sets very high standards.
Exactly. I was talking to a couple of the staff. They had a really tough running day when we were in Notre Dame. and I said, like, how was it? And obviously they've got to manage that as well because of the heat and the weather. They tweaked it slightly because of the temperature. But he said, you know, and it was kind of funny really what he said. It was really interesting. He said, yeah, it's going to be tough for him. He said, but this is the day we watch. This is the day we just watch what goes on. You know, who wants to grind it a little bit more? Who's going to put it in when it's hurting? Because they're the things that, you know, you look for in a player when, you know, they've got to run that last half a mile, when they've got to get round that last half a pitch in, you know, 45 seconds, a minute. You know, can they do it? Can they get over the line? Because they can. It's in the tank. And like I said before, it's down to you. It's if you want to do it. And they're looking at that and they're thinking, if he wants to do it, then yeah, I like that. Because at the end of the day, you know, they're all talented players. You can't take that talent of being footballers away from them. Sometimes you can question some of the desire. Sometimes teams are players of football clubs, and then the manager's got to make a decision. But like I said before, there's not many, if any, in this squad who wouldn't put it in.
But people sometimes underestimate the importance of games like this. You know, pre-season games, sometimes a lot of changes, sometimes doesn't have quite the full intensity. But this is the groundwork, this is the platform for results that they won against Barcelona at Anfield. That will to win and run to the end. We saw the players flat out at the end of that game. That's what's put into them in this kind of session over this course of the weeks we've been here and will be elsewhere moving into the season.
Well, exactly, and that's why it's so important. And the manager knows this, and you know, he was quite clever when he was interviewed, wasn't he, before the Champions League final about, you know, are you an unlucky manager? I think he was asked, wasn't he? And because he'd lost, you know, finals with Dortmund, and he'd lost, you know, finals obviously with Liverpool, and they asked him, are you an unlucky manager? And he kind of batted it off, saying, listen, I'm not bothered if we don't win finals. I got to disagree with that. I think deep down he knows that as a manager, for the progression of your players, for a mentality, you have got to win something. You have got to win something.
To keep them buying into the...
And that's not because the manager's got an ego and he wants to walk around saying I've won the Champions League, because he knows the difference between playing in a final and losing to playing in a final and winning is massive. Now, don't get me wrong, I played in the FA Cup final, the League Cup final, unfortunately lost them both. And yeah, I always wanted to play in them again because they were fantastic occasions, but I always had that desire to put the record straight. I always wanted to win one just to know what that feeling was like. You know, but you talk about, you know, the great Liverpool players, you speak to John Aldridge and Ronnie Whelan, you know, when they won something, it was a great feeling for them as a group of players. You know, they'd won it, they'd got over the line, they'd succeeded, they'd done it for the fans, they'd done it for themselves and their family. But the mad thing was, and you hear some fantastic stories from the older lads, is Ronnie Moran used to come in after they won the league title, and they used to put that plastic bag down, which was full of league medals, and they used to say, if you think you deserve one of these medals, take one, and I'll see it in 4 weeks' time when we start pre-season and we go again. And there was no like, well done and clapping and giving them out and patting them on the back. There was none of that. It was like, well done, you've won it. Take one if you deserve one, and I'll see you in 4 weeks because we're going to win it again next season. And that's the attitude of this football club. And that's what I love about this manager. You know, I think we've had managers in the past who have come in and bought into the history and the legacy of the club, but really, have they got it? I don't know. But I think with this manager, I think he's the real deal. I think his honesty's there, and he knows what this club's all about. He is the perfect fit.
Yeah, he certainly is. He's certainly got a grip with what it's like to be at Liverpool. He understands the demands of the supporters. But there is that different thing now, isn't there, as well, for the players. They have won it. They felt that. There's that incentive for them. And it also maybe gives them that little extra straw. You know, we belong at the top level.
Exactly.
We showed, you know, the way they dealt with the pressure. And Man City as well, the two teams in the last few months of that title race was incredible. Every juncture in those final weeks, everyone said, someone's going to slip up. Newcastle again, that's it, it's done now, bang, a goal late on. There was this will to win was absolutely incredible. And that, the back of the head for all these players now into next season, when they're questioned, they have the confidence they can find the answers.
It's a great question. And in some ways, you can relate it to, you know, players personally. You know, I signed for the football club, and I walked into that dressing room. John Barnes was there, Ian Rush, Jimmy Redknapp, Steve McManaman, Robbie Fowler. And, you know, there were times in the first couple of weeks that I thought, you know, am I good enough to be here? Right? Should I be in this dressing room? Should I be amongst these players? You know, there's that wanting to be accepted, you know, and in different ways. You know, I try to do it through my character sometimes, but ultimately you've got to do it by your performances on the pitch. You've got to do it by, you know, showing the manager that you belong there by your performances. So, you know, that comes with time. And then when you get that acceptance, all of a sudden you grow in stature, then you grow in confidence, and it's, yeah, I do belong here, I do belong in this team, I am adding something, you know, I'm playing well, I'm in good form. But as a unit, I think you've got to win things to believe you belong in the echelons of the game, the Barcelonas, the Real Madrids, now the Manchester Cities, the teams that are, you know, the Juventus, the teams that are winning all the time, the Serie A winners, the Bayern Munichs, the big teams. You know, as a group of players, you know, you've got to earn the right to be in that bracket. And to earn the right, you know, you've got to be winning things. You can't keep coming, you know, 4th, 5th, 6th, you know, going out the Champions League, whatever, in the knockout stages. You've got to be pushing for league titles, and you've got to be winning trophies. That's what this team's doing.
But the change, you know, you think back, there was a stage where it was, can we get in the top 4? Can we get in the Champions League? And that was...
It was, can we not sell players? You know, the transfer market was opening, and we were all worrying we were going to sell so-and-so, or we were going to sell him, and, you know, where were we? You know, we were literally like a little bit in the wilderness, to be honest, not knowing where we were going forward. You know, the foundations, I felt, the football club, you could suggest, were like a bit like a sandcastle. You know, it was, as soon as it gets wet, it was just going to crumble underneath.
There was a vulnerability at one stage.
There was a vulnerability at the football club.
Now there is strong position.
You put that down to the owners. The owners have come in. They've had a vision. You know, they put the money where their mouth is. They built something with proper foundations. They got the right manager in. You know, the manager then has, you know, built the right squad. He's got the right team. He's got a lovely blend of youth and experience. One of the first things he did was, you know, change the average age of the football team. You know, he come in, it probably took him 18 months to identify, you know, what positions were his weakest, where it needed improving. You know, there was, do you know what, as well, I got to really pat him on the back for it. He took a bit of criticism, really, and maybe with people suggested he was a little bit stubborn, you know, over certain areas of the football pitch. We were crying out for a player in this position, or crying out for a player in that position. But you know what, I remember reading an interview saying, I've got to give that player the opportunity to show me what he can do, and if he doesn't do it, then I'm going to go into the transfer market and buy players, and that's what he did.
But also, there was never a hasty decision made.
No.
He was prepared to wait for the players he felt were worth waiting for. I'll just jump in and get my third choice.
Absolutely.
Because the first one's not available, I'll wait. So we're sitting Naby Keita, who was happy to wait to get that player on board and do without him for 6 months, so he thought long-term worth it. Great to see that long-term.
Was another one.
Long-term thinking rather than a quick fix, and now we've seen that improvement. It's not selling players, it's not want to get into the top 4, it's consistent Champions League qualification now, back-to-back Champions League final appearances, and of course last season getting the hands on the trophy. The progress is just it can't be argued with now, and especially you add the title race performance in as well. It's just year on year getting that little bit further up the ladder.
And you know, his recruitment has been fantastic. He very has really got it wrong, has he? But you know what? Has he ever gone into that market and bought, you know, a Neymar, a Pogba? You know, yeah, he spent money, of course he has. But has he ever spent, you know, these superstar players, these elite players? No, he hasn't. He's bought players that fit his philosophy, and players who are going to fit into his team spirit and are not going to upset that apple cart. You know, you get a bad apple and it'll soon turn the rest of the fruit bad, I'm telling you. You know, they can have a big influence, you know, and he hasn't got any in this squad. And rightly so. You know, Mo Salah, with a couple of seasons he's had it, has made himself a world star, but he's made himself that world star. He didn't come to Liverpool. We didn't expect him to do what he's done. No. Absolutely not. We thought he'd be a great player, but you know, he's up there with the greatest now. He's not in the brackets of Messi and Ronaldo, but he's certainly in the brackets underneath it. You know, so, and rightly so, they've made themselves them world stars, but you know, they don't act like it. You know, you talk to Mo Salah, he's very much a team player. So is Firmino, so is Mane. You know, he's got a good squad. He's got a very good squad. As long as they all stay fit, he's going to put a campaign together.
Certainly do. Plus, plenty more players still to return after their international commitments as well. Jason and I will take a break just now. We'll leave you with live shots from today's session as it starts to begin in earnest. Enjoy this. This is the first team being put through their paces here at Fenway Park in Boston.
you. Thank you, Gibber.
time, twice. I caught myself that time.
My daughter who's Why? There he is. Hey. With the people. been about 4 minutes. Right, we're off so we can off like 5 minutes. So it'll be once we're back, so you don't well, no, that's just get the program done and then just let us get like half past 27 minutes past we just turn the cameras in. I reckon 10 minutes. it's been changed already, but I think we're back on at 20. Sorry, about 20 past.
That is cool. Just a quick reminder, you're watching LFCTV's live coverage of Liverpool's training session at Fenway Park in Boston. Scheduled programme has changed slightly to give an extended coverage of the training event. Up next at 11:30 will be Goal Rush Champions League. Stay tuned for that following the conclusion of today's session here at Fenway. Boys around the park just now, myself and Jason McAteer will be back shortly to wrap everything up come the end of the session.
Just... Okay. It just reeks of why are we doing it?
Okay, thanks for joining us in our coverage of the live training here at Fenway Park. Liverpool preparing for their 4th game of this pre-season. They face Sevilla here tomorrow night. Jason McAteer is alongside me, down just along from first base. We've been watching the session in some detail, taking a close look at what Jurgen has been working on with the boys this afternoon. What's caught your eye over this last spell? They've been working on shape the last 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes or so, Jason. Explain to everyone watching kind of what that's all about.
Well, first of all, obviously the lads who played the hour, they've sort of sat out this little session that's been going on, just having a little bit of a warm down, a stretch, loosening off, getting some soreness and tightness out the legs. So they've had a pretty easy session. But what they're working on is just a bit of shape from back to front, just an understanding of what position the manager and the coaches want them in. There's no opposition, so it keeps the session going, really. Once you put opposition in, they were going to defend it. Sometimes it breaks down and you don't get the desired effect, which ultimately in this session, it's not only to keep the shape, it's to end up having a cross and then some finishing for the forwards. And as you can see, the lads at the back are working the ball until it's good to go. The forward lads are now set, and here they go. They pick up the pace, a little bit of work. There's the cross, and there's the finish. So as a footballer, sometimes shape is boring. But what I like about this session that they put in is the fact that they ended up with a final ball and and a cross and a finish. So that's good.
Yeah, people watching at home will just assume that training always has someone up against you. There's always an opposition there. How much of it is done without someone there?
Well, quite a lot, because ultimately the session here is to get. The end product is to get a cross and then a shot and ultimately score a goal. So you put opposition in, sometimes the session doesn't get going, it keeps just breaking down. So you can do shape without opposition, and you might have 1 or 2 defenders who are in there just to be
at
about.
That last minute.
Yeah, just to be about. But ultimately there won't be any defenders in there and the ball's fizzing around. But the coaches will be demanding that you're in the right position. It's 1 touch, 2 touch. You'll be building it up. You might want to get an overload on one side and then switch it quickly, get down the right-hand side and put the cross in. The centre forwards have got to get in. So that's what they've been working on. They put a really interesting session on in Notre Dame the other day, actually, which was like working on an overload. So they were playing it out to the left, they were keeping it there for 2 or 3, 4, 5 passes. Then all of a sudden, the big switch was on, and then they were in down the right, and the cross was coming in. So that was really interesting. But what I have noticed is the session's actually done at pace.
Yeah.
There's an intensity about it. They're not just going through the motions. Here you can see they're like 1 touch, 2 touch, working it up. Centre forwards are still working on their finishing. And once they've finished, like now, bang, they're off. So it's a good workout. It's got an intensity about it and a sharpness. And it's just something to keep them ticking over. Not too strenuous. Keep them ticking over for tomorrow night's game.
Yeah, fascinating to get a bit of insight into how training actually works. For many of us watching, we just assume it was always just almost having a game almost all the time, having someone against you. But not the case.
This is where the understanding comes for footballers, on the training ground. People just think like they turn out on a Saturday and they put in that performance and they seem to all know what they're doing. This is where the hard work's put in.
There's a lot of repetition with stuff as well.
Well, it's all repetition. Shape is just literally repetition. Me knowing where you are, me having an understanding with you. I get it, I open up, I know you're going to be there. So I get it, 1 touch, I look up, you're there. Because we're all trying to get into areas where we're going to affect it. Ultimately, it's that area between the defence and the midfield where the likes of Salah's going to be, Firmino, where he drops deep, Mane coming in off the line. That's where they're trying to get into them areas. And once you're in the final third, then usually managers, they're quite happy for you to do what you want. There's no real story to it. It's like when we get in the final third, I want a bit of magic from you, or I want a bit of, a bit more intelligence. I want a bit more craft, guile. They're working on crossing and shooting here, so the centre forwards are maybe getting an understanding where they're going to run. You've seen a couple of pullbacks as well, so the midfielders will be hanging on the edge of the box. It's all about being there at the right time and doing the right thing.
Fascinating. So great to get that insight, Jason. Great to be able to see this live here at Fenway Park. It's been a really, eye-opening experience to see this close up. I'm sure you've enjoyed casting an eye over it here today as well this evening. And this is all in preparation, of course, for the game against Sevilla here tomorrow. Our coverage on LFCTV starts at 10:15 in the UK for that 11 o'clock kickoff. We hope you will join us for that. Now, though, from the training session from us, it is goodbye.